happy face on again here. The announcements are going to start at the beginning after my welcome. So I wanted to put in right here that you people out in YouTube land, please, if you have any announcements, put them in the chat right now. Beautiful, more music from Mary now. Prelude. So good morning on this. That was wonderful, that answer. So welcome to Eastrose Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I would like to extend a special welcome to those who have been maybe away for a while or are visitors for the first time. And I was going to tell you to sign the guest book, but I think we don't have one out there yet. So when we get one, all right. And I want to say welcome to those of you who are out in enjoying the comfort of your home, watching the service. I am Carol Knox, and this is your worship leader for today, and this is John Netherton. He is the speaker. And he is one of our very valued members who is our technical genius and all-around support in about all areas of the fellowship. He will be heading a panel today, and the panel members are John Wygant and Sue Matranga-Watson and Katie Norris. And to begin, before the spiritual worship part of the service, I have a few announcements. First of all, we'll be giving Reverend Patty Pomerantz a great send-off since she's retiring next Sunday, the 19th, right after her service. It will be a potluck picnic outside unless it rains, and come one, come all. The General Assembly service will be on June 26th, the next Sunday, and you can attend that live at the Convention Center or online. So there will be no service here that day. And I was given some announcements here. Everybody, he says, bring flowers next week for Patty's last day. Fill the church. And next week is Patty's last reflection. It is also a picnic and so forth and so in her honor. Everyone is encouraged to attend and honor and celebrate her service to Eastrose. We'll begin now the worship part of our service. We'll light the chalice.
Sacred flame, protect the reaches of our hearts and souls as we enter into this sacred space this morning, now consecrated, that within we may discover ourselves anew.
So please stand if you wish and join me in singing hymn number 340 in your gray hymnals, though gathered here to celebrate. And since this has not been sung before, Mary will play it through all the way through once.
This is When We Were Kind by our own Barbara Stevens, submitted to an anthology of pandemic poetry. Keep your stories of plagues, of demagogic rulers, of martyrs who launched 1,000 agitations. I can no longer cry for the suicides, the charred homes, the drowned sheep, the desperate children. My bones have become weary, and my heart feels as sore as a stillbirth. I long for butterflies and for magic that doesn't depend on derangement or death, that allows me to forget that we are slouching towards Babylon. Make me believe the clouds are as sweet as marshmallows and the soldiers as tender as trees. In the woods, aspen and hemlock cradle fallen comrades. They send salve through their roots. Sing me a lullaby, teach me the words, and make me think back to a time when we, too, were kind.
Eastrose is a welcoming community in which we come together intentionally to accomplish and share that which gives meaning to our values. Half of this week's offering supports East County Rising Community Projects, which is a grassroots organization energizing East Multnomah County residents to create equitable, livable communities centering on underrepresented and marginalized people. John will tell online people how to work this.
To donate online, you can go to eastrose.org and use the donation button on the page. You can scan the QR code on the screen here, or there's not one in the YouTube chat. Scan the screen or go to eastrose.org or go to bit.ly/donate to Eastrose.
So now let us share what gifts we're able for the support of the fellowship. John and I will bring the baskets around.
I'd like to thank Reverend Barbara Stevens. I spoke with her last night, and like any good talk or sermon or anything, completely rewrote the last thing the night before. And she helped me. She helped reorient me because I am this could have been a 30-minute talk, and grieving therapy sessions will often last an hour and just scratch the surface. And I have about 5 before the panel starts. So this is an introduction to the introduction. And as you kind of saw this morning, and just in general, when I chose this topic to replace my previous one at the last minute, Thank you, everyone who had the patience for that. I admit I had no idea what I was doing. I saw the deadline, but it came up on me anyways. I had little time to plan a course and lay the groundwork, and near zero information to lay that groundwork with. And as the possibilities of what I might do and the vision in my head for what I wanted it to be started slipping away, I just did what I could and can only hope that the results elicit the outcome that I'm aiming for as I recover from the fatigue of the haste and the hurry and the scrambling in a fog. And I realized that sounds a lot like the pandemic, doesn't it? So I'm going to jump right into it. Grief. Grief is at its core, the emotion of loss. And loss isn't just death or destruction. It is the going away of the things that we care about and identify with. Grieving is an active process, one we must do deliberately, intentionally, explicitly, and consciously. One of the key concepts in emotional work is that what we resist persists. What we resist, the subconscious sees as a threat, and if left unexamined and unprocessed, we descend into a cycle of reaction to the emotion that we're not acknowledging while simultaneously exhibiting the behaviors of that emotion, which just leads to this metronome of emotional insanity. And grief ungrieved manifests itself in various ways that we have seen on an individual and community and societal level. Shock and numbness, anger, irritability, lowered frustration tolerance, guilt, fear, fatigue, worry about the future with the loss, and fantasizing or ruminating about what could have been without the loss. And what has COVID been but a disease of loss? Lost lives, lost cardiopulmonary health, lost predictability, lost normalcy, lost incomes and homes, lost, global fiduciary stability, lost dreams, and particularly Kafkaesque to me, a loss of the feeling that other people, by their breathing nature, are not by default dangerous contaminants to us, that they are not safe not because they might hurt us, but that because they are breathing, they are hurting us. I believe a large percentage of our civilization is currently stuck in a state of grief ungrieved. Much of it from COVID, so much, but also just in general, as our society kind of values just pushing through and not acknowledging and processing sensitive and what feels like dangerous things. And that it's the source of at least a significant amount of the coarsening and acidification of the collective dialogue and how we are in relation with one another. We are individuals in community, a community of individuals. And while we lift each other up, share our experiences, and with it, some of the emotional load, and heal our burns together, we ultimately walk through our fires as individuals, alone. As psychologist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross said in 2004 of her famous 5 stages of grief, quote, "They were never meant to help tuck messy emotions into neat packages. They are responses to loss that many people have, but there is not a typical response to loss, as there is no typical loss. Our grieving is as individual as our lives. That's why I chose a panel service and why the questions reflect on lived experience. And that's why we must spend time grieving intentionally. What we resist persists, as individuals, as communities, and as a civilization. And with that, we will head into our panel. And here are the 3 questions that I have asked them. First, how do you think your life would look today if the pandemic hadn't happened? 2, where were you in life on March 23rd, 2020, when the Oregon lockdown began? And 3, what's your new normal? How do you see your life path changing forward? And with that, I welcome our panelists up to the front. And thank you very much for taking the time, especially on such short notice, to do this for us today. So you can come on up.
What's the plan?
There is no plan.
Don't plan.
Yeah. So, let's start with Sue.
I was hoping the other people would say.
Oh, well.
No, that's okay. No, that's okay.
Okay.
That was being kind of a weenie out. Okay, do you want me to respond to all 3 of these, or one at a time? How would you like me to?
Let's do all 3.
Okay. First, how do you think my life in general would look like if COVID hadn't, the pandemic hadn't happened? Well, I'd be about 10 pounds, 15 pounds lighter. Seriously, stress does certain things to you, and for me, it kind of made a little belly here that for some reason I'm just not working very hard to get rid of, and it's there. On a serious thing, I had goals before the pandemic that in my work, I work as a prison chaplain, that I transferred to another, the minimum part in our facility. And I had dreams of what I would be able to do before I retired. And I had planned on retiring actually this year, but the beginning of this year. And I'm going to retire next year. Everything just went belly up with work and the pandemic. So my systems there would have been different. The other thing was, and I might have mentioned this in a sermon or talk or something, when we realized we were in a pandemic and things were going to lock down, I looked at my calendar and I crossed it. Well, this isn't going to happen, this isn't going to happen, and this isn't going to happen. And for those that know, I'm kind of the chair of, or was the chair of the auction committee, and we were this close to put in all the work that we had done to have our auction, and that was canceled. We thought we could postpone it. It didn't happen. So really a lot of grief looking at my calendar going, no, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to go there, I'm not going to have this, I'm not going to. It was like, instead of being a freeing situation, like, oh, I don't have those responsibilities, it was a real grief and sadness, realizing that there were just things that were not going to happen. Where was I on March 23rd? Well, I was at work, I think. I don't remember. It was masked. We've been masked up at the prison since that. We have not unmasked. Because this was prior to any vaccines, I was very nervous about being in the facility, even with masks. And so I was able to work from home for a few months at the beginning of the pandemic and the lockdown, which was very helpful for me until the higher-ups in the government said, no, chaplains have to be back in the facility. So back I went, and back, you know, I've been blessed that it hasn't, I've been lucky. I haven't got sick from anybody where I work. What's my new normal? I'm sad. I can't get rid of my sadness. It comes in waves. I'm not walking around always sad, but it comes in waves. Also, the last 2 years, my cabin, my house, it burned down. We all saw the smoke that was so scary and caused a lot of damage to not only our environment and ourselves, but our psyche. And globally, the weather has just been crazy, and as well, politics and all of that. So I'm sad about the outcomes of what is happening. I used to plan. I'm a planner. That's what I do. It's part of in my genes. And so I have to plan, and then I have to say, this might not happen. I have to look over my shoulder. Oh, at work, we're going to start having visitors come in and offer religious services. Oops, no we're not. We're closed down again. And so all the work that I did to get everything up and going, cut. So it's really sad, but I don't give credence to things that I used to give credence. Like, oh, this is going to happen. Well, maybe it might not. So, what keeps me going? My garden is beautiful. I swear I think the smoke did something to my plants because I have things blooming that have never bloomed before. And I don't know. I have not done anything different. So that has been good. We have weathered in my family. My youngest daughter never got her shots, nor anyone else in her family. And we weathered that episode of her not coming to see us and us not coming to see us and us meeting outside without animosity and distrust. And that's a good thing. And I know that we're all in this together. It's not just happening to me. And so, in some ways, I think, in a very weird kind of way, that brings us all as a community in a world something in common. And it's not me, you versus you, it's all of us. It's being affected. So, what do I expect for the future? I don't know. I really don't know. I used to know. I used to think I knew. I made plans, but I don't know anymore. So I just have to say, put one foot in front of another. And like the AA and NA and all those, you know, just live for today as best as you can. And try and love, and it's really hard when everybody's cranky, including me. But try and love the people that are very important to you. Because often when we get cranky, we take it out on them because they're there. So I think I'm done.
Yeah, the pandemic really did feed us all a nice big, healthy helping of humble pie. When it comes to certainty and knowing about the future, but the loss of that certainty is a loss. And where there is loss, there is grief. And with that, let's go to Katie.
Okay. how do you think your life in general would look today if the pandemic hadn't happened? In many ways, that's too complex of a notion for me to want to even fathom. But I see just at a really high level, I see the pandemic as being sublime, a terrible blessing. It has provided many good things in addition to many terrible things, in addition to just different. So my job currently was, I've been working in digital marketing for decades, and so because my whole career is digital, it didn't really change my work situation other than I didn't have to drive to the office anymore. So I already was working from home 2 or 3 days a week for years, so all I did was just flip that switch to 5 days a week. So no big deal there. I already had all the tools needed to do all that work. So so my life in general, I mean, it only looks different in that I'm not commuting. And commuting, I had, I was commuting 2 hours a day. Frankly, I still have to commute 2 hours a day to take my son to and from school because I live here in Gresham, but he goes to school in Portland because his dad and I split time. So that really didn't change. But I think that because the pandemic forced businesses to change, like for instance, my company was on the brink of the Portland office needing to relocate, and our lease ended in October. And so when we went home in March, we weren't sure how long we were going to go home, but soon it became apparent that we weren't going to go back, and they decided not to get a new office, and so they closed down that office by October, and no more office. So we don't have an office in Portland anymore. And I've experienced that before in other jobs where they closed the local office, and sent everyone home to work remotely, so that was nothing to me. I was glad because in some ways it made things easier with my commute for my son to take him to and from school. But what it did to business was fascinating to watch because no longer could people, so there's this idea that you travel because face-to-face time is more important for business and it helps build relationships and all that. So that travel shut down. I think a lot of people who relied on the framework of modern life for their success were like at a loss. So it was, for me, as a independent contributor versus leadership, it was kind of fun to watch. Because I already knew how to scramble, so it was fun to watch leadership scramble. And it was interesting, it was fascinating, because I wanted to see what they were going to do. Like, are we going to go under? Are they going to make us go back to work? Because during this time I decided I am not going to ever go back full-time to an office, ever. This is it. For me, this is the breaking point. I like working at home. I'm never going to go back in. If I work for a company that wants me to go in like a little bit, I'll go in once or twice a week, but that is it. I will never again work for a company that forces me to work in the office every day. It's not necessary. As long as the lights are on and the computers are working, I'm good. Okay, I'm going to move to the next question. Where were you in life on March 23rd, 2020, when the Oregon lockdown happened? I was in a new job in Portland, an office that was about to lose its lease. My son was in 9th grade, starting high school. So I was in a new job. He was starting high school, and he was starting football, which terrified me. But I let him do it anyway, because I want him to be physical, and I liked his being interested in team sports, but I was terrified of him having a head injury and ruining his life. So when COVID hit and school wasn't going to happen the next year, I was like, yes, no football. So that was good, and he in the time that, okay, so where was I? I was at work. It was at spring break, so he was, football season was over, we were heading into spring break, so there was this pause, and he was already at home. And then my office, people had already started kind of trickling away, and they were being at home to be with their kids, and I I went in on the 23rd, and the office was empty, except for like 5 or 6 people in this really large building. And I was looking at my new desk that I had hardly sat at, and there was a Post-it that had told me the Portland Public School had called, and school we would stop school on the 16th, and it would start again in April 1st or something. And I took a picture of that because I thought that was funny. But I gathered my desk together and just kind of sitting there, being slow about getting the office together. And then the office manager came running through and said, "It's closing, you gotta leave now. We gotta close the doors now, so get out now." And then she said, "But the fridge is full, go grab whatever you want." And she had just stocked all that. We had they provided all the food we ever needed to never leave work. So I just ran my butt off to the kitchen and grabbed a couple of grocery bags and just filled them up with all the fresh food that she'd just done a grocery bag. So all the fresh food and the cabinet food, and I took a picture of that. Thought that was really cool. I was like, post-apocalyptic world, yes! What are we gonna do? I'm gonna stop and get toilet paper on the way home. And I did. I bought my first toilet paper run was around then, and I got 2 large, say, packs of toilet paper, and the woman at Target was like, "You should only buy 1." And I said, "I have 2 families I'm buying it for." And that was true. My mom was, I had to buy for my mother as well. But then since that was the first reaction I got, I decided at that point I wasn't going to hoard stuff anymore. Although I'd always said that toilet paper was as good as gold in a post-apocalyptic world, so that was sort of my motto going into it. So what's my new normal? Okay, so right away we had to figure out what to do with Eastrose, because we had, not only was the auction shutting down, but we couldn't go to services anymore. So we had to switch to Zoom overnight. I think we missed one Sunday where we worked together to figure out what are we going to do, what are we going to do. I'm like, I know how to use Zoom. And so we basically just started putting together these PowerPoint presentations and having Zoom services and just communicating with everybody to log in. And a lot of people didn't know how to use it. And it was just, it was fun. I felt really engaged. I love making PowerPoint presentations. So I was in hog heaven. And I became really, really busy helping the church. And I also became really, really, because all my friends on Facebook were making bread and starting to do these online yoga classes and take courses that they never took before. And I'm like, I'm going to take a writing class. I'm going to help 16 to 20 hours a week at church. And I just started getting really engaged with all these different things. But then work had lost its boundaries, so there was no more commute. So I started working at 7 a.m. because the minute I woke up, I'd look at my phone and I'd see some emails and I'd just start working. So my boundaries for work got really gray. And so my new normal has been evolving, but in general I have a lot of flexibility, but I also have filled my time up to such a degree that I can barely function. And that's my own fault. So my new normal is trying to get to a place where I have better boundaries about work and church and just the kinds of things I take on, and create enough space for myself, for self-care, because I really just threw that aside completely. So my new normal is evolving as we speak.
Yeah, COVID, like you said, it's kind of a terrible blessing in that it shut the door on a lot of things that were left unacknowledged in the past, and just a lot of the past, and it was very unselective about what it shut the door on. It just kind of pretty firm opened the door on everything in our past, and said, no, it's time to go forward now.
That's a good way to think.
And I know that bleeding of the boundaries. I have a certain someone in the audience today that has more than once wondered where I am and when I'm going to regain my sanity and actually take some time to sleep. So nothing about that. So, and with that, let's go, John.
Okay, I would start by asking, If I wander on too long, will you cut me off?
No.
Yes, you should. I'm going to start with question 2. It's the easiest. Where was I March 23rd, 2020? I don't remember. Got that one out of the way quick. How would my life be different today? I look at my life, and I'm retired, and so I'm still retired. That hasn't changed much. I think of myself as a futurist. I have background in information and in urban planning and in teaching high school physics. And I look at the laws of physics and what they tell us is going to happen and see how they seem to conflict with the laws of government. And I know that the laws of physics are going to win. And so my thought, I'm just going to throw these out and ad lib, because I see a good future preceded by some real strain. And so, am I trying to understand the future? It means I have to look at the past. And part of that past goes back a couple of billion years, back to when the first 2 tiny little organisms exchanged genetic information. And before that, it was all by mutation. And the death was massive. And it's still a lot like that. For example, an octopus lays about 80,000 eggs. And how many of those are going to survive to reproduce again? Just a pair. And so the world is filled with birth and death, and we need to sort of celebrate that, because the process of evolution is survival of the fittest and survival of the best. So if I look back and see where I see God in all of this, I think Ray Bradbury said it very well. We are an impossibility in an impossible universe. So the likelihood that we are as we are is so remote, because the universe is so perfect that we actually have been able to evolve. And we are still evolving, which means the future is going to look better, because the whole process of evolution is one of creating quality. You start with a lot of quantity, and you get rid of everything that's substandard, and what surfaces is quality. And I spent a bunch of life doing software, and I can tell you that good software is a whole lot better to have than big software. Quality is the theme of God's universe. And so where we are going, we've still got some practices that keep wanting more and more stuff. But those are going to go away because they have to. The laws of physics say that there's finite mass, energy, and momentum. We've got way too much momentum towards growth. That's going to go away. And we're going to substitute quantity with quality. So the future is looking good, provided we can get there with some sense of order. And that's probably all I have to say.
Wonderful.
It's a very abstract, sort of top level.
Yeah, now, there are some details of that. One of the ways of getting quality, first off, if you got so much birth and death, all that death is bad. So God said, we're not going to create so many babies and have so many of them die. Rather, we will select the best parents to have the babies. They call that territoriality, where some alpha male, some strong dude, lays out a territory and says, this is mine. And he shares that with his group. But one of the resources that he doesn't share, and we're talking about a place that's got food, water, shelter, minerals, whatever it takes for a group to survive, And he says, I'm not going to share all those resources. I'm going to keep the females for myself. So the next generation all have his alpha male genes. And the alpha male females select the best males. So we've got quality coming from both directions. Fewer children, but better children. Now, sometimes that gets carried away. And so what we've experienced with President Trump, turns out he was an alpha male, and one of the things alpha males demand is loyalty. You look at the 10 Commandments. The first 4 of those 10 Commandments are loyalty to God. And so we've got alpha male view in our religion. And how all that's going to turn out is better quality. We will learn to live better with each other. We will recognize that if you read the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution, you see that the whole thing is designed to keep alpha males from surfacing. The Constitution is going to win, and our politics are going to change, and things are going to be better. So the light at the end of the tunnel is not the headlight of an oncoming train, it's the light of the future. Now I'm done.
I mean, not that you're done, but
It's always,
you gave us hope.
yeah, and it's always a pleasure going through the satellite view, and that is about all the time we have for answering panel questions, and thank you. And thank you, all 3 of you. We're not quite done yet. We do have several minutes for Q&A. So if there are any questions.
Questions and answers, Jim.
Yeah, questions and answers. We will take those and have a conversation. Linda had her hand up first.
I was wondering, John, any sadness over COVID or losses, which the other people mentioned, especially soon?
Yes, of course. I myself, Gene and I have both been very fortunate. For me, the worst impact I've had from the 4 vaccinations I've had is peeling off the Band-Aid. And so I think we do have sadness. We have sadness ahead of us. We've got too many people on the planet, and that's going to settle out. It's going to be hard there. God has always managed every population by the 4 horsemen of apocalypse. And that's going to happen to us. But out of the end of it will come betterness. So my family's been fortunate.
I'm wondering if any of the panelists have had extended family members or friends who have experienced some of the more horrendous impacts of the pandemic. I'm thinking, for example, maybe a family that works as nurses or nurses' aides or cops or teachers. Well, I know you know teachers. And how your contact with, or farm workers or people like, who had a much higher rate of illness and death and job loss, et cetera. If any of the people speaking have had folks impacted indirectly by family members and how that impacted you.
You go first.
Okay, my sister, who some of you may know, is adopted, and her biological parents are, well, her father is Navajo and lives in Arizona, and we recently, in the last few years, went to meet them, and she connected with them, and then she went to the Navajo Fair a couple years ago, and is just starting to really get in the groove of being friends with her biological father, and his son and he got COVID, and within 2 weeks they were both gone. So it was terrifying during those days of hearing on a daily basis how fast it went. I mean, I would say they were staggered. So the first one, Jason got sick, and then his father got sick from him. And Jason had died within 2 weeks, and then the father had died the following week. So that was sudden and painful and just really devastating. My sister took it really well. I mean, she's handled it like a trooper, but it was so sad to see her go through that loss. I feel it deeply for her forever.
As a chaplain in a prison, I deal with a lot of grief and loss, just because. But the pandemic has killed so many friends and family members of the men and women that I meet in prison. And the grief that comes from them is just overpowering. And they can't, and what makes it even worse is they can't attend any of the funerals because of the guidelines of corrections and even COVID. So it was like, for a long time, it was like 2 a day would come in and say, my cousin died, my grandfather's sick. I don't know how many. One day I had 5 different individuals come in to talk to me who all had either their father, their grandmother, their grandfather, or an uncle or an aunt that was in the hospital and on ventilators and wasn't expected to live. So for me, it's been an onslaught of the death. Now, I have not had any family die from COVID. I've had family that have been sick. Nobody's sick enough to go to the hospital. But they've been sick. Almost all of my siblings have got the shots, so that has helped them, I think, my belief system anyway. But work has been really tough, really, really tough. And I live in a retirement community, and I have to give really credence and respect for the management there, because we had only like a handful of people that got COVID. They worked very, very, residents, not even a handful, maybe 3. They worked very hard in establishing boundaries and all that. Staff got sick, but again, nobody has died from COVID that has lived there. But in the prison system, yes, and it's been overwhelming.
We have time for just a couple more questions if anyone else has got.
I suppose it's sort of a question. In the beginning, for me, there was a lot of like cabin fever and just wanting to interact with people and wanting to go out and just feeling trapped. And then after a couple of years and things are starting to open up again, I'm finding myself feeling very nervous being in crowds, like extremely nervous. Just coming back here was a really stressful thing, even though I had wanted to so much for so long. And I'm just wondering, like, have other people experienced similar things or heard about other people experiencing similar things?
I've talked to lots of people that are introverts, including 2 of my bosses, and they loved it because they didn't have to go in the office, and everything they did was by Zoom. And by the way, I think Zoom has been the God touching us, allowing us to have contact with family and friends and work and whatever. I just love Zoom. You know, I get tired of it if it's the only way I can communicate, but I just think it's wonderful. But yes, I've had a lot of introverts say that it was wonderful and they did not want to go back. And I'm a very social person, so I miss people, but the Zoom filled my need. And when I started going back, even though I'm wearing a mask, I mean, I still go to the grocery store and wear a mask. In a large crowd that I feel uncomfortable, I wear a mask, you know. went to a concert last night, lesbian choir, and everyone had to have masks, and everyone had to be vaccinated, and I felt better because we were all masked up. Even the singers, unfortunately, had that, were wearing masks, which was hard to hear someone say. But I understand that feeling.
So I'm one of those introverts, and so when I was crossing out the things on my calendar, I was like, yes, yes, yes. This is great. I can hide behind this for a little while. No excuses, I can just say, oh, it's COVID.
One more.
Well, one of the things that happened with Katie was, after March 23rd, I was moved to her, my sister, her sister, up to her house. And she gave up her bedroom and her bathroom for me. And I lived there for almost a year. Yeah. So, I mean, that was a big change.
Yeah.
But I did do the dishes every night.
That was good. That was a blessing.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the beginning of dialogue, because that needs to continue. Sharing our experiences so that we can share the emotional load, and helping each other grieve what's ungrieved, because the loss of what could have been is a potentially infinite one for our emotions, and the loss of dreams is like a death. And so I want to end, grab my notes here real quick, I want to end by answering a kind of a question that I brought on myself by starting this conversation, and that question is, what do we do? We can chat about it. We can we can talk, but doing something is the mental putting one foot forward for the brain. And so a few things is, one, we can start a grief and grieving group for what we have lost and how we've had to readjust in the past 2 years, and humanize each other, not just Eastrose, but like the larger community, helping to humanize and bring 3 dimensions to each other by this what was said, this common shared experience of the wake of COVID. Ask questions about it. Ask lots and lots of questions that come from a place of curiosity, not just of reaction to the hurt, because it's easy to do, but questions that come from a place of genuine curiosity about what happened, why it happened, what does it mean. We can grieve on an individual group level. How do we grieve as a civilization? I don't have an answer to that question. I don't even know where to start, but I know it starts by asking a question. The one thing I will leave off on is William Warden has, Kubler-Ross's 5 stages are usually misrepresented, but I also find them to be sort of what happens incidentally in the grieving, but tasks to grieve is what William Warden has for us. And the first is to accept the reality of the loss, that the loss is lost, and that reality without it is what it is. Experience the pain of the grief. Our minds will often mark what is painful as what is dangerous, and it is the work of doing this intentionally to make sure that we separate that things that are painful aren't necessarily instinctually dangerous to us, so that we can process them. And to accept that grief is painful and sad, and that we have to embrace it. Adjusting to the reality or the environment with the loss missing. If we don't readjust, if we don't reorient, we can get stuck. And then we're not processing, and then we're in that cycle where we become a slave to it. And that's part of the acceptance. And these tasks aren't like linear, this is a checklist. You can bounce between them, do multiples at the same time, that sort of thing. And then the last is find an enduring connection with the loss while embarking on a new life. And that's every kind of loss, the big ones and the little ones. I had the loss of what I wanted this to be, and that was a little thing that I need to now readjust and find acceptance that it's going to be okay, that I couldn't get everything to be perfect. But we don't want to throw away our connection, because that will stick us too. We have to remember the good times, and just find a positive connection. Find something that can endure, that won't hold you in place while reorienting your life to move forward. And those are Warden's 4 tasks of grieving. And that is what I ask you all to do, is to start a conversation about this, and just start thinking about grief as an active process that you have to bring in and engage with like an old friend. Because it's not there to hurt, it's there to help. And I think that's it. That's my story. So thank you 3 for...
Wait, I need them to help me with the, the closing hymn, so that I have that, we're gonna have a round, and so we'll have that side and this side.
Are you going to do a meditation?
Oh, yeah. I was going to do a quick meditation.
Oh!
I'm
I
sorry.
thought that was your meditation.
Oh, I wanted to do a quick grounding meditation, because we can often get stuck out of here and now, and coming back to here and now, because here and now is where we always are. So just a brief meditation. So sit up, feet on the floor, get comfortable, and close your eyes, and acknowledge that the first thing that's going to happen is sort of a flood of the brain wanting to just chatter on. And don't try to extinguish it, just try to accept it, and instead focus on sensations. Your feet on the floor, the hardness or softness of your shoes, the seat, your hands, your lap, or wherever they may be, the air moving around, the traffic, it's here now. And let's take a moment and breathe in, and just hold here and now. And now, breathe out, and go ahead and open your eyes. And here and now is where you are. And so that's the meditation. And now, let's proceed.
We hope that, thank you. We'll have the closing hymn right now, and that is hymn number
we,
413, going on in peace.
are we having them up here to help, or are we going to do it?
They need to go over on that side.
Okay, so, panelists, will please switch places briefly.
Okay.
Okay, now, if you would open it up and look at your hymn 14, what, 413?
413.
They say that there are 4 groups. We're just having 2. So, John and your group will start it and sing all the way through twice. My group will start at Everywhere. When they sing Everywhere, we'll start with Going on Peace and sing it through twice. Mary is going to first play it we'll start out all together. Then you'll start, and then we'll start on Going on Peace on number 3 there, where it says number 3, Everywhere. Okay? Okay, Mary. Have the extinguishing of the candle. Thank you.
Are going to have it. Spirit of life and sacred flame, we end this time now together of shared joy and sorrow and discovery. And while this flame may be extinguished, let us keep the light and the warmth in our hearts as we explore our vulnerability, as we explore the emotions that we have discovered here today. And may you go now in peace. And now, please remain seated for the postlude. And that concludes today's service. Thank you all for joining us here in the chapel and at home. And it is now time to worship at our most sacred altar, the coffee cart. And those of you who are on home or at home or are in the chapel and would like to join, please join us on our Zoom chat. You can scan the link up on the screen here. It will be in the YouTube chat or on the Eastrose website.